Welcome back to Hey Kentucky. We are happy to now be joined by the Senate Democrat floor leader, the minority leader, Morgan McGarvey, and also a former lawyer I worked with. Right. We joined Frost Brown Todd together, and now look what you've become.
we're both not practicing law as much anymore.
That's exactly right. All right, let's get started. A lot of stuff going on right now. Give people the update on this pension bill. Where are things as of today?
We're still waiting to see, is the short answer. As we're taping this right now, the bill still hasn't been revealed by the governor. I think that's a real problem. I mean, we got called into special session on 4 hours notice. And when I say this is not political spin, we started to hear the rumors. I'm texting the members of my caucus saying, hey, you might want to get ready. And they're saying, well, how do we know? Watch the governor's press conference. We found out about the special session when it came out of his mouth. Asked us to be in 4 hours later. We get there, there's no bill. Here we are today. At least we have a draft of a bill available, but we know it's not the final product. So we're still trying to wait and see what is actually going to be in this legislation that is supposed to overhaul the pension system.
Let's start with this as a basic question. When the other bill got struck down, Matt Bevin came out and said, this is an emergency, needs to be done right now. Does it, in your mind? I mean, does there need to be a bill passed before the end of the year?
He needs to make that case. They keep saying that. The pension system is not going to fail by the end of the year. The pension system is not going to fail by the end of next year. Is it a problem? Yes. Do we need to do something about it? Yes. We have a big unfunded liability, and we need to fund it. But they've got to make the case that action has to be taken the week before Christmas with no notice and no bill in order to do it. They haven't done that. The closest they've come is by talking about the ratings agencies. And look, we don't want the bonds in the state of Kentucky to default. But they said the closest they've got is we got a letter just this afternoon from the governor's office that said 2 ratings agencies have inquired. Who even knows what that means? So, I mean, they've got to make the case that this needs to be an emergency. They haven't done it.
All right, one of the things that's been done in this bill is they've changed what future teachers will get. Basically, won't get a pension, get a 401k. It's kind of at the heart of all this. When I look at that, though, it doesn't really save all that much money. It saves a little bit of money going forward, but it actually does nothing about the problems of the past. To me, it's a lot about nothing. Am I wrong?
No, you're right. And so, I mean, this is one of the things that's a problem, right? We have an unfunded pension liability. How do you fix an unfunded liability? You fund it. We have to fund our pension obligation. We have a legal and moral obligation to do that. When you take new teachers and put them into this cash hybrid balance plan, it's very speculative because one, it doesn't save a lot of money. All the analysis we had from last session shows it saves like half of 1% of the total fund that we've got out there. So that doesn't really work. 2, there's an employer match that comes from the state. And then they have an additional employer match to try and keep the benefit similar to what it is now, but they put that on the local governments. This year, that's not that big an impact, but 10, 15, 20 years from now, as more new teachers come in, they start to get into that system, that's basically an unfunded mandate.
There are some local governments that say they could be bankrupted by that. Do you think that's plausible?
Yes, it is.
So what I don't understand with the Republicans is I get the idea, and you have to give Matt Bevin a little credit. They have started funding it fully. They've put more money into it. But what I don't understand is this kind of passing the buck to local governments. Why is that not a bigger thing you all are talking about?
Well, part of it is we are talking about it, but of course, the media hasn't been covering it as much. I mean, when you are in the minority, sometimes it's hard to amplify that message. It's been out there. The school boards are talking about it, but this is one of those things where, people start to sort of just glaze over when you start talking about pensions.
I understand that. Okay, so here's one of the things I hear from people who support Matt Bevin. One of the things they'll say is, well, at least he's trying to do something. Right. They'll say, Steve Beshear and the folks in the past, they didn't do anything. At least he's trying to do something, and that's better than nothing. What's your response to that?
Well, first, we passed major pension reforms in 2013 under Governor Beshear, the only major pension reforms that have been passed. So to say that the Democrats have done nothing just isn't true. Second, several bills have been introduced. I've been introducing a bill with Republicans that I've sponsored for several years that is a constitutional amendment that allows for expanded gaming to finally come to Kentucky. But 100% of the proceeds for the first 20 years would go towards the unfunded pension liability.
So let's talk about that for a second. Yeah. Another thing I hear, well, what would the Democrats do that's better? You want to expand gaming. What else? That would help, but that's so small still of what we need. What else would you do?
I mean, you need to have expanded gaming. We need to be talking about medical marijuana. At the end of the day, those are Band-Aid solutions. If you really want to have the revenue necessary to pay our unfunded liability, and that's all it is, an unfunded liability, when you look backwards, doesn't have anything to do with the future changes being proposed. You got to have revenue. We need to have real and meaningful tax reform in this state.
And what does that mean?
You know, I think what we need to do is what they did this last time. They lowered the taxes on the wealthiest individuals and corporations. They raised them on the people who can least afford it and our nonprofits. That's not the way to raise money in this state. We need to have tax reform that, I think you need to be guided by principles. First of all, you can't have regressive tax reform. You can't put a bigger burden on the already hardworking families of Kentucky. You know, but second, you got to be somewhat business friendly. We have to recognize we are surrounded by other states like Indiana, Tennessee, Ohio, and we can't just drive business out of our state with a tax code. But third, it doesn't need to be revenue neutral. You know, we've got to find a tax code that is capable of growing and generating revenue soon.
I would argue, and we'll stop with this, that both the Republicans and the Democrats don't usually admit one thing, which is at the end of the day, we have to raise revenue. That without raising revenue, it's simply, there's no system that will work. Why won't people just get up and say that? I've heard your name potentially talked about running for office. Would you get up and say that?
Well,
I did.
Yeah, I think I did. So yes, we are saying it, and that's the thing. I think people are saying it, but it's hard to get people to pay attention to what's going on in Frankfort.
Yeah.
You have to do something like give people 4 hours notice to come to Frankfort to get on a show, and then they listen. And of course, that's just part of what we're seeing nationally in some right-wing playbook in Michigan and Wisconsin and other places. I think just to get attention and put in ideology in a lame duck session.
A lot of speculation you run for Attorney General. Are you going to?
You know, right now, I hate giving you somewhat of a political answer, but we are so focused on getting through this session that I'm looking at those decisions after the holidays.
All right, Morgan McGarvey, thank you very much. You've come a long way from us sitting in that cafeteria at the law firm.